I'm joined by Aaron Brooks, and he's an attorney. Aaron, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Liz. Thanks for having me.
I'm really interested to know what your firm does and tell me a little bit what you're doing now in this unprecedented times.
Sure. Well, I'm an attorney. I've been practicing law in Illinois for about 24 years, and I focus on technology, privacy, and security matters.
Wow.
So generally, I represent software developers and other entities who have to deal with highly sensitive information. I do a lot of work with healthcare providers and health information technology companies. So right now, as you can imagine, we're getting a lot of questions about medical privacy and also about telehealth, which is technology that doctors can use to see patients remotely.
How should healthcare providers be thinking about COVID-19 when talking with the media?
That's a good question. And a lot of providers are getting questions from the media. Obviously, this is something that the public has a lot of concern about and wants to stay up to date on. So a few rules of thumb. First of all, it's a very good rule of thumb for any medical provider to not talk to the media about specific patient information unless they have that patient's authorization. And so for hospitals, for example, most of their workforce shouldn't be talking to the media at all, and they should try to channel those communications through a few people that are authorized to talk to the media. That way the message is consistent and clear and correct, most importantly. There's a couple of special rules that the federal government has issued to get us through the public health emergency. So first of all, they have made it clear that when the media calls a hospital or healthcare provider and asks for a patient by name, so if they already know that they're interested in a specific patient and name that person, then the hospital can tell them information from their facility directory. So when you check into a hospital, you have the option to either be in the facility directory or not. And if you don't opt out, then you're in the facility directory, and a hospital can tell the media that you're there. And they can also give basic information about your condition. So they can say you're critical or you're stable, but really nothing else. The other question that comes up a lot is there's an exception in the HIPAA privacy rule that talks about disclosing information when it's necessary to prevent a serious and imminent threat to the health and safety of the public. And so that is actually coming into play right now. And so I've seen, some hospitals feel compelled to make a public media disclosure, a press release when they have the first COVID-19 encounter in their healthcare facility. And the thought there is that where it's important for everybody to use social distancing and comply with all of the other precautions that we're supposed to be doing right now. And when a hospital puts that press release out, it kind of tells the community, hey, it's in our community now. So that ups the stakes. And I think that's a legitimate disclosure for a hospital to make. But otherwise, beyond those things, healthcare providers should be sending all this information to the state and local public health authorities, and then the media should talk to them.
Excellent information. Very interesting. What should healthcare providers be thinking about when talking to first responders?
Sure. This is kind of an interesting one because first responders, and here we're talking about 911 dispatchers, firefighters, police, ambulance, EMTs, that sort of thing. They will get dispatched, and they have to go into areas where there may be individuals who have been tested positive. And so we don't want those people to be exposed to COVID-19, and we want them to know that they're heading into an area where they might. So hospitals can tell them that. They can disclose that information, and that is necessary for those individuals to protect themselves. The federal guidance, to be honest with you, is a little confusing on this point. If you read through it, it says that healthcare providers can share this information with first responders. It says on a per call basis. And so I'm not entirely sure what that means. And honestly, it's a little disappointing. You would think that we would want the hospitals and all the first responders to establish a common database and keep it up real time and share this information regularly. But the federal guidance doesn't really seem to provide for that. So maybe we'll learn something from this whole thing and be ready for future similar situations.
True. I'm sure we're all learning a lot about what we should be doing a little bit better for the next situation. So,
That's for sure.
Which we hope to avoid. Tell me, many providers are utilizing telemedicine and, helping us with our medical needs remotely. Are there special things with this COVID-19 that they need to be thinking about differently?
There are. So both the state of Illinois and the federal government have issued some clarifications and some waivers of the normal rules that apply to telehealth. And so the idea here is we don't want patients to unnecessarily come into healthcare facilities that could expose them to COVID-19. And it certainly very much increases the potential for exposure to our healthcare community. So telemedicine is really, really important in almost every case that it can be done. It really should be done. So a couple of things that have happened. First of all, the federal government has issued waivers for most of the HIPAA privacy, security, and breach notification rules. Those don't apply to the rapid rollout of telehealth during the public emergency. So just as an example, in normal conditions, when a healthcare provider is rolling out new health information technology, like a telehealth system, you would need what they call a business associate agreement with the telehealth provider, which is a contract that requires that technology company to abide by a lot of the federal privacy and security restrictions that apply to healthcare providers. Well, those rules are waived right now. That you could think of that maybe as red tape that we don't have time for right now. So the idea is let's just get the system rolled out. The federal government has also issued clarifications about the kind of technology that medical providers can use to provide telehealth services. So, for example, they've said that any technology that is non-public facing is okay. And what that means is, Zoom Health, for example, is a division of Zoom that's special for healthcare providers. That's not a public-facing platform. It's designed for person-to-person communication. But Facebook Live, for example, is a public-facing platform. And so healthcare providers can't use that. But a doctor, for example, could use her phone and use Apple FaceTime to talk to a patient and use it just like a regular office visit. The other major change that's been made, or the major waiver that we have, is the location where telehealth medicine services can be provided. So normally, in order for a doctor to have a telehealth clinical encounter and bill for it under the Medicare rules, it would have to happen in a approved location. For example, a rural physician office. But now it can happen anywhere. So doctors can have office visits with their patients when their patients are at home, just using the built-in technology in their phones. So it's really smart, really nice program to have in place right now.
Well, there's a lot there that I didn't know when it comes to telehealth. And now I think that some of the telehealth stuff and some of the innovation that we have done during this difficult time was going to stay with us. If telemedicine continues, what do we need to be thinking about it when we get back to a more normal life? What else?
Sure, that's a great question. Yeah. And we're seeing that all across the board, even the kind of thing that we're doing right now, we're all getting used to this, kind of remote video communication. I think it's all going to stay with us, and it's going to make us a lot more nimble, as a society. And that's true for medical professionals as well. Telehealth is definitely something that we want to see expanding. It's more efficient for the healthcare provider, and it's more convenient for the patient. So we'd really like to see it continue. And what healthcare providers should really keep in mind now is that even though we have all these waivers in place to get this rolled out very quickly, and kind of eliminating the red tape, when we do return to normal, that red tape is going to come back. And it's important. We say red tape as though it's not important, but, these regulations are important. So, for example, we want our telemedicine system to be secure. And we want the privacy rules to apply, and we want to know that our health information is protected. So what a healthcare provider should be thinking now is, yes, I've rolled out this system rapidly so that we can see our patients during the emergency, but that doesn't mean that I can continue to use it without following regulations when we return to normal. So very important for providers to be thinking about. We do need to circle back and get the paperwork in order. We need to get those business associate agreements signed. We need to do security risk assessments. And, we need to make sure that we're following all the Medicare and Medicaid and HIPAA privacy rules that normally apply to telehealth.
That makes perfect sense, that I didn't stop to think about all the red tape that we are skipping over. And now we're going to have to go back and get it together. And it's for protection for everything. Wow, there's a lot involved in the world that you practice in. And, I really thank you for being available today to explain some of these things, because it applies to all that we are, whether you're in the healthcare profession or you're a patient. So
it really does. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to share some of this information. I hope it helps some of your viewers.
Well, I think it will. And I think you provided an excellent awareness and also, contact with somebody who is a professional and a practicing attorney in this, should we have some needs and questions. So thank you so much for joining me on Business Connection. Please be well, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you, Liz.
Take care.